It was early September 2018 and I had just moved with my mom to a small town in rural Pennsylvania. My new high school was at least 30 minutes away, so I had to start taking the school bus for the first time in my life. I was 17 then, a senior, and already annoyed that I had to change schools so late in the game. My first week was uneventful. Classes were fine, people were friendly enough, and the bus ride was just long and boring. Until Friday. That Friday I missed my usual morning bus. I'd stayed up late the night before watching Netflix and I woke up 15 minutes too late. My mum had already left for work and there was no way she could come back in time. I remember panicking, throwing on clothes, skipping breakfast and running to the nearest stop in case another bus was coming through. To my relief, a yellow bus pulled up just as I reached the corner. It wasn't my usual bus number and the paint was a little more faded, but I figured it was a substitute. I climbed on without hesitation. The driver was an older man wearing a hat, low over his eyes, hands firmly on the wheel. He didn't speak or look at me, just motioned with his thumb for me to head to the back. There were only 3 other students on board, all sitting alone. One girl near the front had earbuds in and stared straight ahead. A boy near the back sat stiffly with his hands clenched on his lap. The third, a younger girl, looked like she had been crying. Her eyes were puffy, and her backpack sat unopened on the seat beside her. Something felt wrong. We drove past my school. I waited for the familiar left turn onto the main school road, but the bus kept going straight, right past the sign, past the intersection, deeper into the wooded outskirts of town. I thought maybe we were picking up more kids before looping back, but 20 minutes later we were surrounded by nothing but tall, dense trees. I looked around, confused, but the others stayed silent. Finally I got up and walked to the front. "Hey, I think you missed the turn for Ridgewood High." The driver didn't respond. I leaned closer, and that's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. He wasn't moving at all. Both hands were on the wheel, but they weren't adjusting. His fingers didn't twitch, his arms didn't sway with the turns. His posture didn't shift. He was completely still, like a mannequin. I turned to look at the girl in the front row. Her earbuds were out. She was staring at me now, eyes wide, lips trembling. "Don't talk to him," she whispered. "Just sit down, please." "What is going on?" I asked, my voice low but cracking. She shook her head, and that's when the bus suddenly turned, sharply, violently, onto a dirt path I didn't even see until we were already on it. I stumbled and grabbed a seat to avoid falling. We drove for another 10 minutes through dense forest. No sounds except the engine and the crunch of gravel under the wheels. Finally, the bus slowed and came to a stop in a clearing. No houses, no buildings, just trees. The doors hissed open, no one moved, and then the boy in the back slowly stood up and walked to the front. He hesitated for a moment before stepping off the bus. 1 second passed. 2, 10. Then the doors shut. The bus backed up and turned around, leaving him behind in the middle of the forest. I shouted, ran to the front and tried to pull the door handle open, but it wouldn't budge. The driver still hadn't moved. I banged on the glass. The boy just stood there, not turning around, not walking away, just standing like he was waiting for something or someone. The bus didn't take us to school. It drove us back to our respective stops, dropping each of us off one by one. I was the last. As I stepped off, I looked back one last time. The driver's head had turned ever so slightly, just enough to make eye contact. His eyes were hollow. I told my mum what happened and we went straight to the school. They said no substitute buses were running that morning, no drivers called in sick, no bus should have been on my street at that hour, and when they asked me what the number on the bus was, I couldn't remember. It was like my mind refused to hold on to it. The next Monday I took my usual bus and sat next to the girl from the strange ride. She looked at me and whispered, "That boy, he's still missing." His name was Leo. He wasn't even on our route. I never missed my bus again after that. But sometimes when I'm standing at the corner in the early morning light, I see another yellow bus drive by. One that doesn't stop, and I don't look at the driver's face, not anymore. In early October 2016, back when I lived in northern Pennsylvania, I worked as a substitute school bus driver for the district. One of the routes I filled in on was Route 7. Nothing special, mostly winding country roads with a few isolated stops near forested stretches. That route had a reputation among other drivers, though no one ever said anything specific, just odd glances and a quick good luck. My first morning on Route 7 started quietly. The bus smelled like it hadn't been cleaned in weeks, and the overhead lights flickered even though I'd just had maintenance check them. Kids climbed aboard, half asleep, earbuds in, paying no attention to me. But around the third stop, something weird happened. A girl, maybe 9 or 10, got on dressed in this pale yellow raincoat even though it hadn't rained in days. She had long black hair that almost entirely covered her face. Without saying a word, she walked straight down the aisle and sat in seat 11 on the left. The thing is, there was no stop scheduled at that location. I didn't see a house or even a mailbox near that gravel path she emerged from. I figured maybe she was staying with family temporarily. I made a note to check with the school later. The rest of the ride was uneventful, but the kids seemed quieter than normal. When we reached the school, the girl in the raincoat stood up last and walked off the bus without acknowledging me. I watched her walk into the building with the others. That afternoon, I went to the school office and asked about her. The secretary looked confused. I described the girl, the raincoat, the long black hair, her quiet demeanor. After a few moments, she said, "No one matching that description was enrolled." I thought maybe she was new or a visitor. Still, I told myself I must have missed her name on the list. The next morning, she was there again. Same spot on the side of the road, same raincoat. She climbed on without a word, sat in seat 11. The other kids watched her from the corners of their eyes. When she passed them, they lowered their voices and avoided her entirely. That morning I kept glancing in the rear-view mirror. Her head remained slightly down, her hair perfectly still. At one point, while waiting at a stoplight, I looked up and saw her reflection. Only she was staring straight back at me. Her face was impossibly pale, her eyes too wide, her mouth smiling, not friendly. It was like she knew I was watching, and it thrilled her. When I turned around, she was sitting in the exact same position, head lowered, the smile gone. I was too unnerved to ask anything. On the third day, things got worse. Halfway through the route, a boy named Jason, 15, always sat in the back, let out this loud yelp. I pulled over and ran back. He was pale, sweating, his arms clutched to his chest. He said the girl in seat 11 had turned around and whispered something to him in a voice that wasn't hers. It sounded like multiple voices layered together. "She said I wouldn't make it to Halloween," he told me, trembling. I asked the girl what happened. She didn't look up or respond. Later that day, Jason refused to get back on the bus. I reported the incident, but the strangest part came when the assistant principal pulled up the security footage from the morning. Jason could be seen reacting to something, but seat 11 was empty. No one sat there. No trace of the girl. Even when I rewound the tape to where I swore she got on, the feed glitched for a split second, then nothing. The district told me it was a camera malfunction, but kids started refusing to sit anywhere near seat 11. Some got off at earlier stops just to avoid passing her. And every day, like clockwork, she'd board from that spot in the woods and disappear into the crowd at school. Then came Friday. It was still dark when I pulled up to her usual spot, but she wasn't there. I waited. Nothing. Relieved and a little unnerved, I continued the route. About 3/4 in, something went wrong with the brakes. I wasn't going fast, but they locked up completely as I descended a small hill. The bus swerved and came to a screeching halt. No one was hurt, but when I opened the door to check outside, there she was, standing in the middle of the road ahead, just staring. That's when I saw it. A massive tree had fallen across the road a few hundred feet ahead, right around a blind curve. If we hadn't stopped, we would have slammed into it, hard. Maybe even flipped the bus. When I looked back, the girl was gone. I took the kids to school, called in the near accident. Later that day, I went back on my own time to that gravel path where she always appeared. I walked it for what felt like half a mile, weaving through the trees until I reached a small clearing. There was a crumbled stone foundation, maybe from a house long gone. At its center was a wooden cross, old and weather-worn, with faded writing. I brushed the moss off. The name was Lena Marie Caldwell. Died in 1978. Age 9, I never drove Route 7 again, but every Halloween I think about that girl in the raincoat. And sometimes when I'm out on quiet roads at night, I swear I see her reflection in the side mirror, just for a second, and sometimes when I'm out on quiet roads at night, I swear I see her reflection in the side mirror, just for a second. And that smile, I'll never forget it. It was early December 2016 in rural Pennsylvania, and I was on the night shift as a school bus mechanic. We had a small fleet of buses that handled the late extracurricular runs, mostly returning kids from sports games and school events. That night, bus number 41 had radioed in a strange engine noise on its return route, and I was asked to wait for it at the depot, but it never showed. I waited until nearly 9:30 p.m., well past the expected return. I tried the radio, nothing, no response from the driver, Mr. Densmore, who had been with the district for over a decade. Calm guy, reliable. When I called dispatch, they were just as confused. The GPS signal for bus number 41 was still active, but it hadn't moved for nearly an hour. The location? A stretch of back road that didn't even connect to the school's route. Thinking it was just a mechanical breakdown, I offered to drive out and check. I loaded some tools into the pickup and followed the coordinates. The road was unlit, bordered by patches of forest and an old barn that had long since caved in on itself. I kept driving until I spotted the unmistakable yellow body of bus number 41, parked diagonally across both lanes like it had just stopped mid-turn. I approached cautiously, shining my flashlight across the windows. The bus looked empty, but all the interior lights were on, casting a washed-out glow against the frosted windows. I climbed aboard, calling out Mr. Densmore's name. No answer. I checked every row of seats, empty. No sign of him, no kids, nothing out of place, except the engine. It was off, but the battery was supplying power to the lights and radio. And the heater. It was blowing warm air, like the driver had just stepped off for a moment. I sat in the driver's seat, puzzled. The keys were still in the ignition. I tried the radio again. Still no response, just static. But then something crackled through. Quiet, at first, like a whisper. I leaned closer. It sounded like the tail end of someone speaking, but the words weren't clear. I turned the volume knob up just as the signal cut again. I decided to take a look outside. I walked the perimeter, scanning for tracks in the snow. That's when I noticed something unsettling. There were footprints in the snow, but not leading to or from the bus. They were around it, circling it. They were small, child-sized, dozens of them, but no adult prints. Just tiny feet making loops around the vehicle, overlapping and intersecting, as if the kids had been walking in circles for a while. I radioed it in, asked dispatch if there had been any reports of missing students, or if Densmore had dropped the kids off earlier and something had happened after. They said according to the manifest, he had a group of 6 returning from a junior science meet at the neighbouring school, but no parents had yet reported them missing. Odd. As I was walking back to the driver's seat, I heard the distinct creak of a seat spring behind me. I turned around sharply. No one. All rows empty. Then came another. Not from the back, but directly behind me. The seat just 2 rows from the front. It wasn't loud, just a subtle shift, like someone had adjusted in their seat. I stood frozen, unsure if it was the cold messing with the bus frame or something else entirely. I decided I had enough. I stepped down, called dispatch again, and said I'd tow the bus back if they didn't hear from Densmore soon. As I turned toward the pickup, I saw something that made me stop cold. The driver's mirror, angled outward, was no longer empty. A pale face, small, childlike, pressed against the window, from the inside, peering out. I spun around. The bus was still, the interior empty. I climbed back up, heart pounding, and checked every row again. Nothing. But this time, the last seat had something new. A pair of children's gloves, wet and warm. I brought them back, handed them to the sheriff, who came later with a search team. They combed the woods for hours. They found nothing. No kids, no driver, no sign of struggle. The GPS logs showed something bizarre. The bus had driven in loops for nearly 30 minutes on that same road, circling over and over again, then just stopped. They found a second set of logs, older ones from 22 years ago. Same road, same bus number, same driver. That incident involved a bus crash during a winter storm that had taken the lives of 6 students. The story had been buried, settled quietly with the families. Bus number 41 had been refurbished and reassigned, but the number and route were eventually changed. Somehow, in a clerical shuffle, it had ended up back in use. That night was the anniversary. The district retired bus number 41 immediately after. They never found Mr. Densmore. No one ever came forward about the kids. The gloves? Lost in evidence? No fingerprints, nothing traceable. But every December, someone in the depot claims to hear the bus radio crackle just once, and a whisper follow, still waiting to go home. If these twisted tales from the school bus aisle made your heart race or your skin crawl, don't forget to like this video, share it with your bravest friends, and subscribe to our channel for more creepy stories. And remember to hit the bell icon so you never miss the next ride into darkness.